guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video we have the guy who rejected his Google internship and now he's working at DAM. So, how about you tell something about yourself and your background? Where are you from?
Yeah, yeah. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Went to the U of A. I'm studying electrical and computer engineering over there. And I tried my best to be active in different things around school, like different clubs and research activities. And now I'm here, and now I've made it over to ARM, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, that's great, man. Like an amazing journey. So, what are you doing currently?
Yeah, so as of currently, I'm a hardware validation engineer at ARM. And hardware validation is a lot about automating the different processes that test the CPUs and designs. Specifically, I'm on an interconnect team, which is focused on connecting the CPU to other peripherals, and I'm doing a lot of the testing to make sure that the interconnect works as expected, communicates over the different protocols properly.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Can you like tell us more about your background? What are you pursuing right now and a basic overview of your portfolio?
Yeah. So I'm studying electrical and computer engineering. And I guess like a basic overview of like the things I did to get here. I was I've been in like a bunch of different clubs on campus. One of them is Arizona Autonomous Vehicles. The club as a whole, what we work on is designing a plane with fully autonomous flying capabilities. So it's got like the different sensors in, it's got airspeed, it's got a camera, so it can like see around and then fly to where it needs to go. That was one of the big clubs I was in. I was event coordinator for Software Engineering Wildcats. What we did there was we worked on well, we just like had a bunch of different events. I mean, I led the day to day stuff and like the bigger events we had every once in a while. And then on top of all of that, I went to a bunch of research labs. I got into that in freshman year, stayed stuck with it, and yeah, I'm submitting a paper in October, so that's exciting.
Oh, that's amazing, man. Like you have like a hell of a background. You have done a lot of things, been to a lot of clubs and like explored a lot. And networking, it's amazing. And I
Yeah, keep
have
myself
also
busy.
exactly. And I have also and he's pretty good at like, managing events and meeting people and taking the lead on. Let's get into our Google thing. So how did you land an internship at Google?
Yeah, so you know, when it came to it, the first thing I did was Google came to visit campus, so I went to their events and talked to their recruiters and the engineers over there. And then I went ahead and applied for their position for underclassmen. They have a position specifically for people who are earlier in their schooling career. And I applied, and I had one of the engineers there put a referral in for me, and kind of put a good word in. And that and then with that, I got the interview. There was a technical interview, there was a behavioral interview, and then after all that, actually, there was two rounds of technical interviews. After all that, I ended up getting all the way through, and then I got the offer.
Well, that's amazing. So like the company came to the campus at University of Arizona, and I think this happened back in 2023, I suppose.
Yeah, last year.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And what organization like did call the community? Was it like SHP or
Sorry.
oh, what organization like called the Google at campus? Like was it like
Oh no,
university
Google came
or
on their
oh
own. They came
really?
on their own.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think like there is this another organization, SHP, Society for Hispanic and something. I think like they also like
Yeah,
call
Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. They
exactly.
also had a session, but I went to the one that was for the general public.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So, what experiences or qualifications do you think made you stand out for the internship?
Well, I mean, the only experiences they would have had were the ones that were on my resume, right? So that would have been last year I was at a startup. I was a I was a I was just an engineering intern over there. There was a lot of firmware, a lot of low level designs. And then before that, I had my internships or my research internships where I was one was low level embedded Android, which is something a lot of people don't say they have experience in, right? Even the people who have embedded Linux aren't usually working in Android. And and then also my research, which is a lot of hardware design and hardware acceleration.
Well, that's amazing. So, well, you are definitely like the hardware guy and not the software guy, or like you're more of a hardware guy than the software guy. So, like,
Yeah, you could say that.
exactly. So, why are you like more passionate about hardware than software? Well, like, there are a lot of people, they get overwhelmed. Like, they can't even think that getting into Google and let alone you who rejected their offer, you get an internship. There are like billions of people. They apply to Google and they're like, hey, just that one chance. If I get in, I get in. I'm gonna be set for life. But on the other hand, you, who is like really passionate about hardware, you have your priorities set straight up. You're like, all right, Google, bye bye. It's time for me to, develop my skills and do something that I like. So, why do you think that you have that passion for hardware?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's a tough thing to answer, right? Like I think everybody wants the software job, it's got the cushy benefits, you got like, it feels like you're never working, you got the work from home all the time. That's not what it's like in the hardware world. But I've always been really excited to see the newest launches of the newest products, like what is the new CPUs that are coming out, who's making the newest graphics card. And I was in computer, like I built computers for a long time when I was younger. Like go to scrapyard, grab whatever materials I could, make whatever. So I've always been like in that world. And I had the opportunity to go to CES, and so I got this hat actually.
Whoa.
And when I went there and saw all the stuff that was, all the new things that were in the works from all these companies, I realized, that's where I want to be.
Oh, that's amazing. So, how do you think that how's the work culture different in like hardware industry than like the software industry?
Yeah, so like in software, there's kind of this paradigm of, you can work mostly remote and you just come in for like a few hours for meetings or whatever. And that's kind of changing. Like there's, especially with the newest like work from home pushes, like it's kind of starting to move back towards different kinds of engineering. But in hardware, it never changed. It was always an expectation like you're in office, you're making your designs, and you're printing onto whatever you need to print.
Can't do everything on virtual.
Yeah, it's really hard in hardware, honestly.
I think that's one of the things that people have a lot of perks when they're like in software job that they don't have to go to offices. But I think right now like it became more frequent after COVID-19, like in 2019 and 2020 that people like they got more work from home jobs than like going to offices. But right now like people are still like recovering from that thing which happened. People now they don't want to go to office. They just want to stay at home and be in the comfort of their home and just like do all the work from here. But still, companies are like calling them back to the offices. They're like, hey, get your ass over here.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. So, well, despite getting an internship at Google, why did you choose to pursue a career at Arm?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just love hardware a lot better. And Google, I mean, their only early careers position is for software, right? Like they have a pipeline for underclassmen to go into software and continue through it. But that's not really what I wanted. And ARM came through with their offer, so I made that tough choice.
Oh, that's amazing. So, what do you think that what is the difference between hardware industry and the software industry?
Yeah, so I mean, the big one that everyone's going to tell you is that the timelines in hardware it's a lot slower, right? I mean, like you make a new design, it usually takes a long time before it's actually printed and comes out to customers, which is true. Like there is it's a lot more testing before things go out, right? And that's why it seems like the industry moves slower. But as far as I'm concerned, the software is only as good as the hardware it runs on, and so hardware is the speed of the entire industry.
Exactly.
Software, yeah, software products though, I mean, working on a software product, like you can make something and have it rolled out in like a couple weeks. Because it's just like you make the edit, you put it through QA, and then usually a couple of weeks, it's like it's ready to go. And if something goes terribly wrong, I mean, you can also push out a fix really quick. Can't really do that on hardware, right? You'd be like, we're gonna print a whole bunch of new chips, right? So it's a very different paradigm, like the industry in general.
So, what are the things that you work in hardware? So, like in software, we have things like people, they work upon operating system, they work on like DBMS, they work on front end, back end, and like machine learning and other things related to all like the software related things. So, in hardware, what are like the topics that you work on?
Yeah, so I think the biggest answer here is making all of what you just said faster.
Oh,
Like, I mean, machine learning specifically is something that can be highly sped up with custom hardware. Like, if you have a specific design, it can do all the matrix multiplication that's required to do all the stats behind AI much faster. So that's one of the big like new paradigms in the industry. It's making all the new software tools much faster. And another thing is just making general compute faster. Like ARM, a CPU company, there's a lot of a goal of making just computing in general faster because CPU is a general purpose computer. It can do basically anything. And so single-threaded and multi-threaded operations, making them move as fast as we can, get all the data out as quick as we can.
well, that's amazing. So, like, I think machine learning recently it has been like a boom, and there are people who are crazy for getting the latest GPUs. I think like back in 2020, even like Bitcoin and Ethereum and like other cryptocurrencies, they went on a boom. A lot of people were like looking for much more powerful GPUs to like mine a lot of Bitcoin. So what do you think about that? That
Yep.
how hardware plays an important role in Bitcoin mining and like mining in general.
Yeah, so I don't really like mining, but custom hardware is very important for that particular industry. I mean, you need to be able to, first of all, you need to be able to do all the complex arithmetic that's required, and that's much faster if you have a custom chip that's made to do that, right? And additionally, you need custom networking hardware to make sure the data gets out fast enough. So there are some people who have like whole special cabling and special chipsets and everything to just get that data flowing as fast as we can. And I think new hardware is going to be very important for the future of that industry.
That's amazing. So like, do you think that along with the Bitcoin mining and all, is it like the same process in machine learning as well? So when we like train models on powerful GPUs, like at a university as well, we have HPC, high power computing. So for like a lot of research projects, we have to like use their servers in order to like like just train our models and like get the results and all. So is it like the same in the machine learning world as well, or is it like different in the mining?
Hmm. It is I mean, it's different math, right? But both of them require very fast compute. At the end of the day, it's a similar problem about how do we get enough data in and data out to be able to do all this crazy arithmetic.
Oh, that's cool. So can we say that in hardware it's like the GPU? That's like the main thing out of all the things that we have. So like the graphics processing unit is like one of the major things which comes to the mind of people who like think of hardware. It's like I think CPU, GPU, and like all the components that you have. So can you explain like briefly what is the GPU and like how things work over there? Just like a basic example, because like we are gonna be delving in software much more. So
Yeah, so ARM as a company, we do CPUs, so okay, give some CPUs some love, all right? But the GPUs are made to do specifically matrix multiplication. That specific thing very quickly. taking the rows and the columns and multiplying together in such a way that the that you can get the inputs and the outputs as fast as you can. And it's a very interesting task of how do you make that specific thing super fast. And GPUs are multi-threaded and multi-cored in such a way that they can do that very quickly. And at this point, a lot of them have their own RAM on board to even like store all of that as it's going through.
Oh, that's amazing. So what do we mean by like multi-threaded and multi-core?
Yeah, so each when it comes to processing in general on a computer, each each every like while the computer is doing an operation, it can't do something else if it's single threaded, unless you pause the one operation and work to another one. But if you want to do multiple operations at the same time, you need multiple threads and something to manage those threads. And in order to do all of that, you need very complicated computer architectures with lots of threads, lots of cores to be able to handle all of that load.
Oh, that's amazing. So basically, I think we can say that all the chips which are like produced by ARM and like Intel, like Core i5, Core i7, Core i9, in there they have like specific threads, I think 16, 32, and things like that. So basically, it's like multitasking. Like uh, in one frame, how many applications can you like, run parallelly? Like a parallel processing, from what I'm getting.
Yeah, very important in that particular domain.
Oh, that's amazing. So, what advice would you give to students looking to secure internships at top tech companies? And like how you got into
Yeah, so I mean, getting into tech companies isn't easy, right? I mean, you gotta imagine like everybody else wants to be there too. So the I think it's the same steps as getting into anywhere else, but you need to make sure you do it as best as possible. You got to be the top of the cream of the crop. So like with any application, it's filling out your resume, putting in the application, adding a cover letter, adding like talking to recruiters, and doing all of those things. But in order to get through like the millions of other applicants, you have to be the one that's doing more than everyone else. And so I would say that starts with talking to a recruiter, then making sure your resume is top notch, submitting your resume, following up with the recruiter, making sure that it all went through, and then scheduling your interview. And you got to imagine they also give a lot of people interviews, so you got to be top of the line on your interviews too.
well, so a lot of people get overwhelmed when they like apply to tech companies. And like in general, I think that people from all over the world they're like pretty crazy about FANG in general. Now, Mang,
Yeah.
Meta, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google.
Oh,
And like millions of people. I think that Google receives more application than the Harvard University itself. I was like reading somewhere, and I was like, "Whoa, that's amazing!" That well, you have more applications than Harvard. So I think the acceptance rate is like much lesser in companies like Google.
yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's just, you got to imagine though, like the people who got in did something different. I mean, if their volume is so high that they can reject like 99% of applicants, then you got to do something that only the 1% do. And if that means only 1%, and if that means you got to go through and get a referral from employees, you got to go through, talk to a bunch of different recruiters. Got to do what you got to do.
Exactly, and I think like the competition is at like a global scale, so it's not like any one country. I think when you come to US and like in general, like go to San Francisco, like Seattle, I think the competition that you have, well, you have people from all over the world. You have people from China, Japan, India, US itself, some Russians, not much lately, but still quite of them.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's a lot of work to do global scale engineering.
that's cool, that's cool. So how do you prepare for the technical interview process at Google?
Yeah, and I mean, uh, technical interviews are probably a little bit harder to prep for. I think I don't think there's anything that I could share that you can't already find online, but I'll go over the basics. Make sure you go through, got your LeetCode questions prepared. I mean, you're going to get a LeetCode style question. Make sure that you know your data structures and algorithms, know hash maps, like arrays, different indexing, different, like all the different like typical things that you need to do all of those questions, and just stick to it. Practice. I mean, there's no like secret code of just if you answer these 10 questions, then you'll know everything you need to know. It's just you got to put in the hours.
That's amazing. So, what resources or platforms did you use to practice data structure and algorithm?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the big thing was just a bunch of YouTube videos, Geeks for Geeks, love them, and LeetCode. It wasn't anything fancy.
So like people they're like they're pretty confused that which platform they should choose. Well, like we have HackerRank, we have CodeChef, then we have like LeetCode, Geeks for Geeks. So they like they don't stick with one platform. They just like keep on switching. They're like, oh, let's try that thing. Oh, my friend is doing that, so I should try and do that thing instead of like what you're doing currently. So how big of a role does LeetCode play in like technical interviews?
Yeah, so it's interesting you brought up HackerRank. Some of my interviews were done through HackerRank. So maybe that's a good platform to use. I didn't use it for my studying, so I wouldn't know. But I think at the end of the day, like which platform you use, like which study material you use, at the end of the day, it's more about what expertise you have. So I think it doesn't really matter where you do it. Maybe HackerRank has a slight advantage because it'll be the same as the interviews you do for the companies, but I think at the end of the day, that's not like the bigger that's not the bigger thing you should focus on.
So basically, like a platform is just something that one should focus on. Like they should focus on practicing DSA and like doing the problems instead of like just choosing one platform specifically.
Yeah, and I know it can be a little like scary, which platform to go with, but I think at the end of the day, what matters more is that you put in the hours, right? More than where you're doing it.
That's amazing. So, well, how do you like practice lead code? Like, did you like used to do 10 questions a day, 2 questions a day, or like how your process was?
Yeah, so I only did like a few questions a day, but it was like before I went to bed, did a few questions, did a few applications, and then went to bed.
Was it
Yeah,
like
put in
something
a
that
lot of applications.
you did like 3, 4 questions per day every night, like before going to bed?
Yeah, when around interview time I was. Basically what I would do is I would apply to a bunch of companies, and then do a few questions and go to bed.
Well, that's amazing. So, how do you like solve a DSA question? So we are like also moving towards the like next question that can you talk about a problem that you solved while interviewing at Google? And like how did you manage to solve that?
Yeah, so when it comes to any like technical interview, there's kind of like a system to how you should answer it. The first thing is read the question. Like actually intently read the question, take notes on what it's saying. It's I know that's a really easy thing to skip, like, oh, I see what's going on. But no, no, no. Make sure you intently read it and take notes about it so you know what's happening. And then next step is here's here's something that I don't hear a lot of people say, but it worked really well for me was say how you plan to approach the question. Just say that out loud. Say I'm planning on using an array for this. I want to use say maybe like a binary search, or maybe I want maybe I think this is best used as a linked list. Just say how you plan to approach things. And then afterward, ask the recruiter, do you think that's a good way to go for it? Maybe they'll say, you should try this. Maybe they'll say, that's a good way to do it. And maybe they say, I want to see you try using this data structure instead. And, I think starting with that, then you go ahead and think, and then once you've kind of structured how you want to go for it, then you start writing it up, asking your recruiter as you go, like, do you think this is a good way to do it? Do you think maybe this is a good idea? Make sure you add some comments along the way, like follow the best coding practices you can think of. Make sure that the code is as clear as you can make it. And then Once you have a solid solution, put it through a few test cases, walk yourself line. Sometimes they'll give you like an IDE where you can just run the code. I didn't have that, so I walked through it line by line with a couple of the test cases they gave me. Asked them like, is that how you want it? Maybe there's some edge cases or some corner cases you kind of considered, like, oh, maybe what do you want to do if that string is empty? What do you want to do if that string only has it doesn't have enough characters? What do you want me to return? And those edge cases, make sure you consider those and just talk through your answer as best you can.
So like basically it's all about like the thought process that you have to like communicate to the interviewer that how you like solving the DSA question. So like going through every information that you can find on that question and like just clearly communicating with the interviewer on your approach. As like you mentioned that in a lot of interviews you don't get ID, so like you can actually run your code and like see if you have any bug or something like that. So
Yeah, so I mean, the big thing is like usually for these technical interviews, the person who's interviewing you is somebody who's done this for a long time. So they know kind of like the different ways to solve it and what's the optimal solution. So, asking them is a pretty good thing to do because they know the right answer. and
so like
and
oh yeah.
and one other thing to consider is they probably want you to consider what's going to happen during those edge cases of, there's too many characters, or there's not enough characters, or the number's out of bounds. What's going to happen? And a lot of times the question won't tell you. Like, maybe it doesn't say what to do if the string is just empty. Maybe you're making a sorting algorithm or something, and there's just nothing in it. What should you return? Should you return that the string is blank? Should you just return the string as it is? It's a real question, right? And maybe you also want to say like you're sorting it, but what about capital letters and lowercase letters? These are the kinds of things you should ask your recruiter because it shows that you're thinking about what could go wrong.
So how do you like standard like in a DS interview? Because like people or like the interviewer like they take a lot of interviews as like you said that they are experienced and like they're doing that thing for like more than I think like 5, 10 years and they like have a lot of applications and like applicants with whom they like have an interview with. So how do you like stand out like in a technical interview from other people?
Yeah, so the one thing I would highly recommend is treat it more like pair programming, right? You're there with somebody else who really knows how to do it, and you're just there trying to solve a problem with them, right? It shouldn't be I'm doing this thing to be examined. And if you have that like fear, then it really shows to the recruiter. And it can really help you stand out if you're talking to someone and you seem like a friendly person to work with. So I would recommend, I don't know, even though everybody talks about how hard the questions are, which yes, they are hard and you will need to practice, when it comes to getting through the interview and standing out, a lot of it is just looking like a good person.
That's amazing. So can you like walk us through like a lead code question, like just like the high level overview of how like you would solve that thing if you like got at Google? So like, do you have any specific question in mind that you think that might resonate with the one that you got in the interview? And if you can like walk us through like a high level overview that you read the question, then you like you just follow the approach, then how do you like think of solving that particular question and like a high level overview of what you might be using the DSA and what do you think?
Yeah, let me think of a good one here.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
let's see. Okay, imagine you have an array and it has a bunch of strings in it, and you want to find I don't know you want to find pretty simply just the one that's earliest in the alphabet, right? That's all the question says. Find the one that's earliest in the alphabet. Okay, so you for loop through it. You find the one that has the character at the beginning that has the lowest value, right? But what about if it's a number? a number, where does that fit? And if you're thinking about this and you ask so if I was given that question, the first thing I would ask is, well, what if it's not? If there's something that's not a letter, how should I handle that? Should I consider numbers to be before or after the letters? And what about the cases? What about uppercase A and lowercase a? Where should they fit? And these edge cases, these corner cases, it might seem tedious to go through them all, but it's something they're expecting you to be able to consider. If you're pushing like production level code, then you should have gone through and made sure you're not going to have some crazy bug. What should it do? Maybe it should just throw an error. That's what that's what sometimes, they'll tell you it'll throw an error. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that. We'll make sure the data is sanitized before it goes into your system." Then you just don't worry about it. But the first thing I would do is ask these follow-up questions of, what are certain things I should consider? And then I would say, okay, so we want to find the one that's earliest in the alphabet, and so then I would say, okay, since it's in an array, I'll go through indexing starting at 0 up until the end, find the one that has the lowest value according to the rest of the criteria they gave me. And then I would start writing the code, talking while I go through, like here I'm calling the indexes. Here I'm writing the for loop. Here's a comment about what that's doing. Here's why I chose this particular variable name. Just going through and like talking while I go through, going through as much detail as I can. And then at the end of it, I would say, okay, here's one of the example arrays you gave me. Here's what the code would do. It would skip the first value, or it would take the first value, set that as the lowest, go to the next one. Oh, that one's lower. It would set it. Next one, it wouldn't change it. Next one, oh, it's at the end. Now we have the minimum. And yeah, that's how I'd go through it. First of all, ask some follow-up questions, tell my plan, and then and then ask them interviewer about that plan, execute on the plan, and then check that everything worked.
That's amazing. I think like this looks like a pretty good approach. What a lot of people do, what I've seen people doing is that like when they get a question without like any follow-up question or like even reading it, they like just start coding it. The instant that they get the question. So what do you think about that? Like the people who just start coding when like they see the question, or like the people who don't do follow-ups and
Yeah, so first thing I would say is some people are absolute geniuses and they'll even get the right answer. But the that's not what the recruiter wants to see. It would be terrible to work with somebody who just doesn't even really go through and check everything and just starts blazing through projects. You don't want to work with that kind of person, do you? You just imagine your manager gave you a task. He doesn't even know what's going on. He just goes through, works on it for a while, and then says, "Oh, my thing, here it is. It's all done." But something changed, or your manager didn't put enough details, and now it's not even what the team needs. It's a terrible person to work with. So you're not doing yourself any favors if you do that. Now, hey, some people are able to do it and even get the right answer, but a lot of those people are rejected anyway. So I would not recommend you just immediately start blazing through the project.
that's cool, that's cool. So what advice would you give to someone just starting their journey with DSA?
Well, first thing I would say is it's not easy, and you're not the first one to struggle with it. It's not easy for anyone. It's a very different way of thinking. It's a slow process, but stick with it, and it'll be worth it.
So like in LeetCode, we have like different questions like of difficulty, like we have easy, medium, and difficult. So well, how do you think that people should approach that? Though I think that you should do every kind of like all of them, but like in interviews, like what kind of questions are like usually asked, and the companies like Fangs. So how are the questions over there as compared to the other companies that we have, and like what should one generally do?
Yeah, so there's like a lot of different levels of these questions, right? Like some companies, they'll probably just hit you with something that's like elite code easy, and then that's it. I think with Fang, it's usually around a medium, and then there are the quant companies, which is usually around a hard. But yeah, as for how to approach them, start with the easy ones, keep on working through them until I'd say you can probably figure it out in like 15 minutes. And once you're at that point, start start doing some mediums till you're around a point of like half an hour, and then start doing some hards. The hard ones are really tricky, and I think even people who are experienced software devs struggle with them a lot. So, if you hop into something a bit too early, it's okay. You can go down a level, keep practicing, keep learning. And as for the easy questions, if you're struggling like there, my biggest recommendation would be to just go through and watch some videos about it. Geeks for Geeks has a solution for every single question. So once you've completed it, go there and see what solutions they had. Maybe you can learn something from like what's the optimal approach.
That's great. So how should like one get started like in DSA? Well, like we have a lot of data structures like arrays, then like linked lists, and then like the advanced kinds like heaps and hash maps and tries and graphs. So how do you think that like one should start?
Yeah, so data structures is not a fun thing to learn. It's very tedious, it's very slow. But as for how to do it, I think we've said it a million times. Go on to LeetCode, do some questions. There's no like fun way around it. And there are some like gamified versions of LeetCode. I've never used them personally, but putting in the hours is a surefire way to get there.
So it's like just like a just do it thing that if you're gonna do something, just go with the platform and like start with the first question, whatever comes, or like just go and like click on the random question,
Yeah,
whatever you can just solve that.
yeah. I usually just go with whatever level I want, hit a random question.
Oh, that's amazing. So what do you think that for like companies like FANG or like in general software dev companies, what are like the basic foundational DSA that you need, the minimum to like get into the interview?
Yeah, so I mean, I think with them it's like arrays, linked lists, heaps, stacks, queues. Yeah, and then hash maps. And then in terms of algorithms, you need a binary search. You need some type of n log n sorting algorithm, like quicksort is the one I always jump to. And let's see, is there anything else I can think of? Like reorganizing trees, how to move stuff around, recursion, when is it appropriate to use that? Yeah, just make sure you know like the fundamentals.
That's amazing. So with like the DSA, like so what were the data structures that were asked to you at your Google interview?
Uh, well, I mean, they just asked me questions, right? So I got to pick which data structures I used.
Oh, really?
But
So like not anything
yeah, so
specific. They just give you like a free hand that use whatever you wanna use and just optimize that.
yeah. And then in order to find the optimal solution, I would ask the recruiter, or I was like, or the interviewer, here's the one I'm planning on using. Is that what you'd recommend? Should I try something else? Ask them. And I think for most questions, the answer to that is like there's like this joke that goes around of just use a hash map because hash maps are very powerful and there's a case to use them in many many places. So maybe a hash map, but kind of depends on the question.
No. And what do you think like what are like some tricks to like do DSA? Because like there are thousands of questions and like I think one person can't do all of them. It's like practically kind of possible, but it's gonna take like years and years and years. So what do you think? Like I have heard of these things like you have patterns, like people they follow patterns. The good software developers they follow on patterns like sliders and then like different kind of questions like positional and all that. So what do you think about them?
Yeah, so I mean, I know everybody recommends the blind 75, which that's pretty good. But as for practicing, I think Yeah, go through like the ones that are like the that are labeled as like linked list or hash map or whatever you need practice with. Go through those ones, and then when it's time to really lock in, start doing the going for the interviews, then hit the blind 75. And if you can get through that, you're probably fine.
How long does it take to like prepare for like a DSA interview? So like just imagine that I have like 30 days and my interview is after these 30 days. So if you were at my position, what would you be doing? And if you're starting from scratch and like you don't have any knowledge of DSA, you just like went to some lectures, but like you were not that attentive, you did projects, but like you just like did kind of average project. So how would you like prepare for DSA in 30 days for the interview that you have after these 30 days?
Man, that is a tough spot to be in. That is not a lot of time. First thing, my recommendation is do not get yourself in this situation. You should be interviewing as soon as you start applying. But if I was in that position, then head down, do like probably like 10 questions a night or something.
Whoa. So they're like just grinding on DSA for 30 days. So that means that you're solving like 300 questions in like 30 days before your interview.
Yeah,
And you're just like continuously doing and doing and doing that. Man, that's gonna be
yeah.
crazy. Like 10 questions like before sleeping.
That's why I would recommend you do like two or three every day for a longer time period.
So do you think like an optimal time period might be like, well, you're about to graduate. So you're done with
Yeah,
your first year, you're done with your second year, now you're in your third year, like you're almost done with the third year. And I think now is the time to like go and get internships and like, in the interview with companies to like get that job. So do you
yeah.
think that 6 months is like an optimal time period to like just, start DSA from scratch, do the lead code, prepare for the interview, and then just give it along with applying for the interview
Yeah.
application?
I think around 3 to 6 months is kind of like a good amount of time to spend on it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Any last advice that you might have on DS?
Uh, it's last thing is just it's not fun. Nobody thinks it's fun, but it's something you gotta do.
Well, do you think that like people can learn DSA from like a practical perspective instead of just like doing questions on LeetCode?
It's possible, right? And depending on the projects you're doing, the places you're doing things, it's possible. But it is the things that they ask you in questions are kind of specific, and I would recommend you stick with some platform.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, moving towards like last two questions that we have. So, can you talk about any personal projects or open source contributions that help you get that internship at Google?
Yeah, so I kind of wish I did more open source contributions. That wasn't really a thing I did. But I participated in hackathons on campus. Was I I had all my class projects, which one thing I would highly recommend for any student is whenever you have a class project, add a couple extra things. Like just add a couple extra features, just add a little something onto it. Because everyone in your class has that project, right? But if you have a little bit extra, you got a couple extra features, you got a new GUI, you got like an interface with some server or something, then that can help you stand out amongst everyone else in your school who also have the same project. But yeah, so I also made a Python web scraper. I had a I had like a online enabled game, like a LAN game. That was a lot of fun. I had yeah, I think those are the big projects.
Go, that's amazing. So like you wish that you might have like done more open source like Google Summer of
Yeah.
Code or something in which like you get to practice your like open source skills.
Yeah, and there were some open source libraries I used, and there were even some bugs I found. But instead of just going through and fixing them, I just raised a report and I waited until somebody else did it. But
Oh,
I
that's
think if I
amazing.
had went through and did it, that would have been a really valuable experience.
I think like debugging plays an important role, like whether in your code or like someone else's code. Well, people like becoming millionaires by like just finding bugs in big tech companies'
Yeah.
codes and servers, I think.
Yeah, it's a very I mean debugging is like I'd say 90% of the work of being in software.
Exactly. So,
Writing code is easy, debugging it is
oh,
hard.
exactly. How do you debug like if you have that thing real quick?
Yeah, I mean it's a slow process, right? You got to go through, have different test cases, different edge cases that it might hit, different just like all these different things that might go wrong. Maybe the server ping is broken or one of the packets gets lost. What is it going to do? And these things are like at this point it's mostly automated testing, but you got to go through and test it all.
Oh, that's amazing. So I think like writing program is one thing, and like then debugging it is another. So you have to like
Yep.
be prepared for both of them.
And with debugging, you also need to make sure your code doesn't break another piece of code or something. Like if it interfaces something later down the line, maybe it'll break something like further down. You
Oh,
gotta make sure that doesn't happen.
just like what might have happened with CrowdStrike lately.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think yeah, that type of thing happens, right? Like bugs happen, and I think it is a sign of bad quality assurance, probably, but it was a crazy surprise.
And
Like a
outrageous.
bunch of
Exactly.
a cybersecurity company pushed a bug that made it so the computers weren't even booting. That's crazy.
And I think that they had to like delete the system file manually in order to like reboot it.
Yep,
It wasn't like, getting automated.
yep.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. All
That's
right.
why testing and debugging are very important.
Oh, exactly. So moving towards our last question. How important is networking and how did you utilize it to securing your internship?
Yeah, networking is honestly, I think networking is one of the few things that anyone can do, and it will set you apart. Like there's no level of you need to do a bunch of questions, a bunch of practice to be able to go network with someone. And it's something that not everyone does. But if you were able to talk to an engineer, tell them your experience, tell them, why you wanted to be somewhere, and you're able to get a reference from them, then you could use that as a way to kind of break into a new company. And it's very it's for some people they'll say it's not a requirement, and I'd say it's not technically a requirement, but I think it's the best way to make sure people know how good of a candidate you are and how much you know. So I'd say for me, it's very important. And as for how I was able to leverage networking, I got into ARM and Google with some references I had, some people I knew. They were able to put in a good word for me, talk to some recruiters, got some engineers to say good things about me, and that I think and that was I'm sure part of the reason I got interviews at these places.
That's amazing. So, how do you start doing networking? So, what's like networking 101 in your perspective?
So I think the easiest place to start is just be active in your own school community, right? Like, there's a bunch of different clubs on campus. There's a bunch of companies who come to visit. Go there, talk to people. And then that's like the easiest place to start. And then beyond that, it's the cold messaging on LinkedIn, the making sure that you just anyone you can like find some way to talk to, just talk to them. And a lot of the time people see this as disingenuous, right? Like you're just talking to this person to get a job. And I think some people do it that way, but for me, I'm also genuinely curious to seeing like what is your job like and how'd you get there? And and those types of things, they can be a huge part of networking. So I think a lot of it's just being friendly and being present.
So does LinkedIn play an important role like in networking and like securing a job?
Sorry?
Does LinkedIn play an important role in doing networking and then like getting a job, like asking referrals for a job?
Yeah, I think at this point it seems like LinkedIn is slowly becoming a social media platform, but it seems like it's still pretty possible and pretty common to get some connections there, and people will usually consider it as a mostly professional or line of communication.
So like when you like get ready for like applying to like a software development job or like a software developer job, so what are like some things that one should like keep in mind? So well, networking important. So we have like LinkedIn, then there's the GitHub repo, getting your resume in line, preparing for DSA and the interview. What else do you think that one should look for?
Yeah, so I think those like the big main steps, right? Make sure you well, the one other thing is there's also the non-technical interviews, like the behavioral interviews and the phone screenings. For those ones, it's a very different style of thing to practice, right? But that it's also something you need to just make sure you practice. Do some practice interviews. Get your friends to do behavioral interviews with you because they're very different from the technical ones.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, it was nice having you, and like I'm like really inspired by you and your journey that you
Thank
rejected your Google internship for something that you like much more. And I think
Yeah, that
that's
I did.
oh there you go, Al. That's cool, that's cool, that's cool.